Cool.
Good day, Isabel.
Yeah, pretty good, thanks. How about you?
I'm doing very well. So, Isabel Cats, I met you yesterday, very spontaneously at a nightclub. Very random, and we just started hitting it off about music.
That is
So I thought I'd invite you here today. And here you are. So this is really spontaneous. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
So you're from London, aren't you? London artist.
Mm-hmm.
And you're down here in Pembrokeshire, the countryside.
That's me.
So you're a big city girl down in the countryside. How do you prefer the city or here?
I like both just as much.
Yeah.
When I'm down here, I'm a proper nature girl, like outside all the time.
Yeah.
I walk like twice a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
So you get a break from all the CO2 emissions
Yeah, exactly.
with cars and stuff.
And you can see the stars here as well.
Oh, I know. I mean, that's what I love about being here.
Yeah.
When I went to, because I grew up here all my life, and then I went to uni in Cardiff. And the one thing I missed is that you can't look up at the sky and see stars. It's just like too much pollution and stuff. But when I come down here, I know you can see all the stars, and it's really good. So, first of all, how did you get started in music? How did it all begin? Yeah.
Well, I've always been writing and I've always been playing instruments.
Always. I mean, there must be in the beginning.
Oh, the beginning being...
Like, what was the catalyst? What got you into it in the first place? When did you start seeing yourself as a artist, a songwriter?
When I was in like young school, early school.
Right.
And I didn't really like school that much, so I would go in breaks and lunch times and just like miss lunch in the music rooms, just like on the piano and like singing and stuff like that. It was probably, well, I mean, because I'm a visual artist as well, so I think the moment where I first knew that that's what I wanted to do, I was doing this like yellow lino print at school, this like star yellow lino print, like you roll it up, ink it all up, roll up, like that. That was when I first knew that I wanted to do art. And music's something that I've always been doing, taught myself guitar, I really enjoyed that. I don't play as much guitar anymore, though I'm going to pick it up again, I think.
Right.
And then this time last year, actually, like almost to the week, I got on GarageBand, just on my laptop, just started making a few things. Got completely obsessed by it, been doing it ever since, and then, things go how they go, and a few things came from that, and yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, the beginning, I hope that answers.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, what I was thinking of is that a lot of artists seem to start a creative pursuit out of a need to be rebellious. Like they have like I've got a friend, for example, who's a producer, and he's really, really good. But his dad's a doctor or a surgeon, and his mum does some sort of really formal education, formal job.
Mm.
And his brother went on to do like law, and his sister as well. And he said that he always felt this pressure to go into some like really serious education, get a good job, get good finance and stuff. And he then became a producer because he kind of wanted to rebel against that. He wanted to just do his own thing. And the most rebellious thing you can do from like a dad who's a surgeon is just to go and just do music and just do whatever the hell you want to do. So I don't know, do you feel like you're a bit of a rebel in that sense? Like, do you come from a family who are all creative people, or are they doing something else?
I think that if my dad hadn't have done what he did, he would definitely be an architect or something. Like, he's very creative. But then none of them are artists. They all enjoy art and culture and stuff like that. But I'm not sure if I would call it a rebellion, because it is something I've always just done. But I guess perhaps it is as well, because I'm always making the most, so much of what I make comes out of times where something different needs to happen.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I get you. So you didn't really feel any resistance doing songwriting? Your parents weren't like, you need to do something serious? They were like pretty supportive of that?
Well, I was so unhappy before I started like dedicating myself to creating stuff.
Yeah.
So when I started making music, my parents were just like, keep on going.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. Which I'm so grateful for, because I'm so aware that it's not like that for everyone.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But yeah. Mm-hmm. So I have lovely parents that get it.
That's great. All right, I really want to do a deep dive onto songwriting, because I had a bit of experience doing songwriting. I used to be in a band, and then I had to go off and do more serious stuff, unfortunately. But I do have a really good appreciation for songwriting, and I studied it quite a lot. And yesterday, when we first met, we had a really interesting conversation, which is the reason I wanted to do this today, because I just thought your philosophy on songwriting was so interesting. So the way I thought about it, what you said, is that creativity and constraints have this kind of relationship. I feel like if you want to be creative, you kind of can't just have a blank piece of paper in front of you. You kind of need some constraints that kind of guide where you can be creative. And normally in songwriting, there's a pressure to write a song that's 3.5 minutes long, so it's radio friendly. And
Totally.
there's a verse and the chorus comes in within 60 seconds because the people who are listening don't have an attention span. This is like this talking down a lot to the audience, and I don't really believe in that.
Yeah.
And the way you approached it, which I thought was fascinating, is that the constraints you created are your songs are just short and really short. I mean, I was listening to it today, and like the shortest one is like 45 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
The longest one is like 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a fascinating constraint, because if you have that time frame to work with, you can't really think in terms of I'm going to have a couple of verses and a couple of choruses and a middle eight and a bridge or whatever and then bring it to the end. It completely changes how you think about doing it. So where did that come from? Like, how did you start thinking about completely changing your constraints and having really short songs instead of long songs, whatever it is?
I think, like, first and foremost, it just happened. Like most things, it just sort of happens when, you know, sat there with Ableton or with the piece of paper, whatever it is, and it just sort of happens. And then, you know, after a while, it starts to make sense and this kind of thing.
Yeah. So you you fell into the groove, like the stuff you were producing naturally was just shorter.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, this sounds like what I can do.
Totally. Right. And I would feel like, you know, if there was some things don't feel right and some things do feel right. So if something was like naturally 45 seconds long, I wouldn't like want to just sort of be longer. You know what I mean? I'm not like a dictator, really.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? I'm there to collaborate with what's sat in front of me.
Right.
You know what I mean? But yeah, in terms of short music, I think as well, because a lot of my writing is like to do with visuals as well. So I hope it makes sense when I say if I'm thinking about a landscape or some sort of setting that it happens in, like scenes in a movie or this kind of thing. It's the time frame is important, I think.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when you sit down to write a song, I was going to ask you whether you think about in terms of, because when I used to do it, I would sometimes sit there and because I was a guitarist, the first thing that would come to mind is a guitar riff, and I have a huge bank of guitar riffs. Most of them are awful. And that's where I kind of started the songwriting. I start with a riff and then try and build on that. I haven't heard of anyone talking about having the visual side of it in mind whilst the songwriting. So is that like the predominant thing in your mind when you're writing a song? Like you have a visual vision of what it's going to be like? Is that what it is?
Majorly, yeah. And it's sometimes like a literal vision, or it's just like a, you know what I mean? It's just like a feeling or something of a sort of a general vibe, and then just start somewhere, keep on going with it, and then it sort of is the thing.
Yeah. Do you have I'm trying to understand this visual part of it more. Do you have visions for what your music would look like in like a film, or or is it do you have a story in mind of like two people, whatever it is? Like you've got that in your mind?
Yeah, totally. I have a bank of scenes in my head which I'm sort of working my way up towards filming and making a short film from like an EP length, like a 4 or 5 tracks of songs.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I was going to ask you as well. I feel like there are two approaches to songwriting, at least that's what I felt when I was doing it, is that there's kind of the intuitive approach where you just do what feels right and you just keep building, and like you said, it ends up being this long, I'm not going to force it to be anything else. So there's the intuition, but then there's also like the theory. Like a lot of people study songwriters and songwriting, and they learn about the structure. So when they sit down to write a song, they're like, hey, I've got this idea, but now I need the theory says, these rules say I need to have this and that and that.
Totally.
It sounds like you're far more intuitive.
But you know what though? I think that's another reason why I do write short songs, and I've actually had so many fucking people just trying to get in my way about it. You know what I mean? Telling me that this is the way it should be, and which I have to brush off because it's just fucking ridiculous. This idea that it has to be some sort of way, right?
Of course,
or to me it is anyway, and I think that was a real driving point. Or rather, affirming point for me, because, don't get me wrong, I love men. I love men, but I have encountered so many male producers that are like trying to work with me and just get really frustrated with me because like they just, I don't know, it's just like trying to push me in a certain direction that I just like, it just doesn't really feel right or something.
Oh, right.
So now that's sort of the main reason why I just work with just me,
Yeah.
you know, mainly. But I'm sort of starting to work with a few other people now.
So you are starting to collaborate.
Yeah.
So how does it look like when you're collaborating? You said you've worked with some producers before.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get in contact with them? How did it begin? I mean, what was the deal there?
At the start, the first producer that we were just friends, and he was always talking to me about music, so that was probably like, you know, it was definitely in my mind when I started making music. So he's always on about this Ableton thing. It looks so sick, like you can do anything on it, let me try it, you know. And then the second one just saw like few of my tracks on SoundCloud. We got together, we tried to work together a little bit and booked me a show. And then the ones that have coming up are just people that get in contact through Instagram.
Right.
Much.
So they just contact you and you're like, yeah, sure, just collaborate with you.
Yeah, if it's the right conditions, you know.
Yeah. And when you're actually doing it, what do you bring to the table and what do they bring to the table? Are there ever any clashes where you're like, no, leave that to me because that's my area of expertise, and they're like, no, that's what I'm good at? Does it happen at all?
I wouldn't call it clash because I think like that's quite an uncomfortable place to be. So I'd rather like talk about it critically. You know what I mean? I think that is because what I bring to the table is like an idea of the abstract or something, or maybe like a slightly more like picturesque. I don't really know if that makes, well, it does make sense, but like I think there's sometimes a clash with expressing this abstract idea.
Your visions clash for the song, is that what you mean?
Not clash, but I think it often takes time to share what it is. Do you know what I mean? So I think when I'm collaborating, it's usually, or it has been, usually the abstract side that I'm bringing, and then the other person will bring like the perhaps more structural side of it. But yeah, I think it will kind of really see. I mean, the good thing about the things I have lined up is that they just said, we just want you in studio sessions, basically. Not going to try and you just do your thing. We'll prepare something and then you just do your thing and see if it, you know, we'll just work together kind of thing. So I think it'll be fine. I mean, yeah.
Right. And if you could collaborate with anyone, who do you reckon it would be? Or three, like just three names that just come to mind.
Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga.
Oh my god, I love that woman. She's my actual hero. You don't even know. We spoke about this album, The Fame, yesterday, didn't we? One of the most fucking intelligent commentaries on pop culture ever written. That album is a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah?
Yeah. And I think I'd also love to do a collab with this girl, Kia Blue. It's one of my favourites, South London artists. It's fucking amazing, just fucking amazing. No one is making music like her. No one. And yeah, so she would probably be the second one.
South London, I mean, because you live in London.
Yeah.
Do you reckon it's easy to just send her a message and just say, hey?
I'm working my way.
Yeah.
I'm working my way. But I'm just gonna go to her next concert just because I have to see her live. I think
you're going to turn up at her house, just knock on the door.
I have to see her live. She's so good. But yeah, you must listen. You must listen. She's amazing.
I listened to her today, and The Fame, the album as well.
Yeah.
Completely different.
Yeah.
There was when I was listening to The Fame, I thought, first of all, it doesn't really sound like your music is inspired by that, because hers is Lady Gaga's was popular.
Yeah.
It does kind of follow the rules.
She's a master of fame.
But what I did think was similar is that your songwriting sort of lyric, the vocals were like, is non-romantic. It was kind of more like attitude based, like there's
Those
real
ones
attitude.
are, yeah.
Yeah. And I thought that seems to be what you share with her. Like there's an attitude. It's not about like lovey-dovey stuff and boys and...
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. She's a lyrical genius. Let's face it, she's so good. And I think the third one, Twigs, FKA Twigs.
I've never heard of them.
Oh my god, she is so good. She's so good. She makes kind of abstract music as well. Often doesn't follow a very strict structure, but there is a structure in place. She's so good. Her vocals are amazing. But I'd also like to work with, you know, like a male voice as well. I think that could be quite interesting.
And the voice in particular, like
the voice in
male
particular,
sound, right?
yeah. 'Cause there's a lot of room in that, I think.
Yeah, I've heard some songs before where there's like for example, the woman would take the verse and the guy would take the chorus, and I really like the contrast there.
Yeah.
It's quite cool. Any ones in particular? Because so far you mentioned 3 women. Are there any male inspirations there?
Well, from the electronic side, a lot of male influences. Like I love.
It's dominated by males, isn't it? The like electronic side of it.
Yeah, although like people like Peggy Goo.
Oh yeah, my brother's obsessed with Peggy Goo.
Yeah, she's amazing.
But and also, what's the name of the Charlotte DeWitt? You know, Charlotte DeWitt?
yeah, so good,
Yeah.
so good. And floating points as well, Fortet. I love those ones. I think I'm trying to think of like male voices. I mean, I also really like Blady's style. I do really like Blady.
Blady.
You know Blady?
No, I don't Blady.
He's a really interesting artist. It's like very like internety.
Right.
Yeah.
Internety.
Yeah.
You mean like he talks in memes and stuff?
Not really. There's just something about it which is really sort of the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, something like... He's a really interesting artist. You should look him up.
I'll give him a listen.
Yeah.
If we had like a tech guy, we would have pulled it up now, but never mind. On lyric writing, actually, because when I used to do lyric writing, I bought some books to like learn. I wanted to just understand the theory, like talking about intuition and theory. You seem more intuitive. I didn't really feel like I was that good intuitively, so I wanted to understand the theory and then try and apply that. But like going back to what you said about how your song's constrained and they're short, you don't really have much space to explore lyrical ideas. Like I remember I was listening to your song earlier, which is my favourite one of yours, by the way. It's not alive unless it's been dead. Is that what it's called?
It's not alive if it hasn't been.
If it hasn't been dead, yeah. Like when that comes in, and there's only really 2 sections to it. There's the first section where you're just repeating that and some other like lyrical parts, and then it just goes into this really nice melodic part. So there's only 2 sections, and even though the lyrics are short and there isn't much there, they were quite like poetic. So how have you thought? How have like you attacked lyric writing? Do you get a chance? Do you think about exploring ideas, or is it just like whatever words sound good together and you can throw it in there and then just...
Bit of both. I usually find that if I start on a strain of idea, then it will naturally follow through into something that makes sense in terms of the idea. But I think like I'm interested in the balance of kind of upfront visibility and like the slightly more distant part of it. Because I think it is a really important distance. That's one thing. Like it kind of like boundaries in real life, you know, but making that into music. And if there's, you know, because if I've got like, I don't know, 4 fucking verses that are chock-a-block full of words, then it doesn't leave that much space for the listener to kind of interpret or make their own kind of... Or at least, I hope at least that the viewer or listener can make their own
interpretation.
Yeah, exactly. They can kind of like extract something from it, which is something that comes from my painting as well. Because when you paint, you want to think about a space for the eye to rest, and a space where something is like, or at least I do anyway, a space where something's happening and kind of like the journey of that thing and yeah. So, and that kind of balance between obviousness, because I was thinking like, it's a bit fucking boring if it's obvious, don't you think? Like you want a little bit of like you want to give a little bit of power to the listener rather than just being like...
Oh yeah, that's amazing you said that. That was literally what I was thinking not too long ago when I was thinking about commercial music, because when I was younger it was a little bit stupid really, but I just listened to commercial music and I just thought it was all stupid. I just thought you always feel like you're being talked down to a little bit, and then I kind of grew up a little bit and just realised that the incentive for big record labels is to pump out songs that appeal to people who are going to listen to it once on the radio. So I kind of understood it. But it got me thinking about one of my favourite film directors, who's Christopher Nolan.
Oh, yeah.
And what I really like about him and his films is that even though he's a major blockbuster director, he makes films which you have to watch 3 times to understand it. and he doesn't treat the audience as like a stupid person. He treats the audience as someone who can figure things out and use their mind a little bit. And so you end up watching a film and it's like 3 hours long, bit of an epic, and there's so many concepts in there, ideas that he's exploring. Like, he's a really smart guy, and I always thought about how you could apply that to music, because it is a shame sometimes when there are pop songs and they're catchy, but you listen to them once and then that was it, and then you just feel like it's there as like cannon fodder. It's just a product. You don't really feel like it's there to build some kind of trust in the artist or something. So the artists that I always take to are the ones who treat the audience like just an intelligent person. And
naturally, fucking hell.
That's what I really like.
Another thing on that, just briefly, is, you know, when all these fucking like love songs, pop love songs and stuff like that, I always think that's quite an interesting like idea, because there's this whole fucking like agenda pushed through the fucking canon of pop music, you know what I mean? And so maybe, you know, it becomes even tougher when the listener isn't firstly treated as an individual who can work stuff out for themselves, and then secondly, you know, when they're treated as just sort of like porous sponge. You know what I mean?
It's just so much more stimulating. I feel like people kind of want to be stimulated, and there's this idea which I've read a little bit about into like the business side of music, where it's the objective of an artist, at least I believe, shouldn't necessarily be to go get signed by a record label. I think it used to be the case, you know, several decades ago, where there was no other option. If you wanted to be successful, you had to get signed because they had the financial backing. But you don't need to do that now. There's an idea developed by this guy called Kevin Kelly, where all you have to do as a creative person is develop your 1,000 true fans. And a true fan being defined as someone who will not only shout your name from the rooftops, but will, in financial terms, will be willing to pay like £100 per year for you. And if you build 1,000 people, which is really small, and just make them your absolute fierce, loyal fans, you have a career. Like you're earning £100 a year, which is more than most people earn, and you can support yourself and do what you want and release music, and you also have a tribe of people who want to hear from you. Yeah,
exactly. I'd rather have a tribe of people that want to hear from me than people that are just not too fast. There are a lot of people that are not too fast.
Yeah, I feel like that as well. Still on lyric writing though, are there any subject matters of interest? Like when you think about lyrics, are there sort of, just quickly I'll just explain that one of my favourite lyricists or songwriters is Matt Bellamy from Muse.
Okay, yeah.
I really like him just because he's not afraid to explore like scientific ideas. He writes about black holes and the thermodynamics and all these sort of scientific theories, and he finds a way to make it popular. And I always found that really inspiring, because it's not just about love and the cliche things. He was exploring ideas that are interesting to him and still making it popular. So like, what sort of ideas come to mind when you're thinking about lyrics?
Boundaries is the main thing.
It seems like a very abstract idea.
Well,
do you mean like personal boundaries or?
All sorts of boundaries, like how we spoke about last night, this idea of there being like an axis and a scale of like, and just picking where that is.
Yeah.
So boundaries is definitely a big one. Personal and just like in general, but boundaries definitely. And sometimes the songs that I make, I don't release many of the songs that I make that don't have any sort of boundaries in terms of attitude, because I like there to be a tension. You know what I mean? Like I write a lot about war. War and peace and death, like a lot about death.
Some deep ideas.
It's only natural, isn't it?
Yeah.
And transformation, rebirth, that's a big one. Sex, but in sort of ways that, you know, I'm trying to make something interesting. You know what I mean? That's probably a main thing, and I think as well, I want it to be encouraging. You know what I mean? Like the last 3 songs that I've released, which are kind of the more aggressive ones, they are. I want listeners to like walk around and feel so powerful when they listen to those songs. You know what I mean? Because that's how I feel when I make it. And that was like a very healing experience to make those. So I want it to be encouraging, empowering. And in terms of lyrical stuff as well, I try and sort of, I think I'm navigating this territory at the moment of like writing about my experiences in terms of messages that my angels give me and like things like that, you know? It's kind of a very interesting like balance to get between that like front facing message and that distance behind the character or behind wherever it is, because there's a chance there to go, yeah, there's a lot of room in that to make it hopefully I can express what is truth so well that anyone can find that truth in it. You know, truth is a big one as well.
I can't let you go on what you just said. You said messages that your angels give you. Can we discuss that? What do you mean?
What do I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, spirits in my ear.
They said there's some divine force sending you inspiration.
Oh my God, every day.
Yeah.
Every hour, and I love it so much. I love it so much.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like in science, you know, I can't remember who it was, but maybe like, I don't know if it was Einstein or one of those top fellas who was like, once you see enough evidence for something, you have to accept it as truth. And I just think that, yeah, it's just totally like, it's actually, I'll tell you one thing that was like a major thing in terms of that little example. In January, a friend of mine from school died, and he was such a lovely guy. He was like my first boyfriend, I think. Like, he was so, like, such a gorgeous person. He's so nice. And that really got me thinking about death and transformation, and how actually, like, maybe the reason for death is the love that lives on afterwards, you know? Like, it doesn't really, like, death isn't really real, you know what I mean? As much as it is, but
it lives on in the people afterwards.
Because it lives on, and it doesn't just live on, like, here or here or here. It's like a different scope of, it's a different environment that it lives on, you know what I mean? It kind of, like, travels. And, yeah, so in this, in January, and a couple of weeks afterwards, I found, like, over the course of 2 days, like, so many one pennies on the ground just in London. I was just walking around going about my daily business, and I literally saw about 27 pennies in 2 days, and like just all with the crown face up. So I thought, this is really weird, like, this is really interesting, because I always think, like, whenever I see white feathers, I know, like, anyway, and so I started collecting all these pennies and put them on these sort of 2 by 2 centimetre magnetic canvases, sort of like shined them all up individually, like painted all the canvases, made sure to do like all the same to each of these like little magnetic canvases. And then I found out online that there's a whole bunch of people that think that when you find these little pennies or an abundance of them, it's angels that send them to you, or people that, you know, whatever. And I don't know whether that is, you know, fact or fiction, but all I know is that I saw a fucking ridiculous amount of pennies in 2 days, you know what I mean? And there was like a few other things like that, and I think I've always been like blessed with the company of like lovely things, and yeah, since then, and that was like a major point in my writing as well. I think since then it's just been like a major part of what I do every day and in my music.
Yeah, it sounds like you have an enormous bank of inspiration to draw from, all these different sources. And there was someone told me once, which kind of resonated with me. He's a much older guy. He was like a family friend or something, and he was a songwriter in the day. And he said, and I think I mentioned this yesterday, he said that the best songwriters are the most damaged people. And that really got me thinking, because you do hear a lot about. I think the source of inspiration from like trauma or damage does seem to be stronger than if your life is pretty good and you've had it pretty well. It seems like people who have had experiences which have changed the course of their life, maybe not for the better. They kind of find a way of expressing that through art. Whereas people who have had a pretty good life, it seems like, I'm not just I'm generalizing here, but it seems like they end up going into some form of self-expression because they're able to express themselves normally just to people. But more damaged people seem to become more introverted, and they find a different way to express themselves through art, and they end up producing pretty good art.
Maybe.
Yeah, so I'm not sure you thought about that before, but
Yeah, I do sometimes think about that. I think there's so much healing that can be found when you're making things like.
oh yeah, healing. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. It's kind of a healing process. Bit of a left field. What do you think about Billie Eilish?
I think she's sick.
Yeah.
I think she's sick. I love her vocals. I think she's really interesting, and I think as well she's like done quite an interesting thing in that she's very subtle in her approach about connecting with her audience. You know what I mean? She has a very sensitive, I don't know whether it's her management or it's her or whatever. I think that's a very she's managed to really hit something niche that's resonated with so many people. I feel that I feel sort of a little bit sad for her that she was so sexualized, even though she was deliberately trying not to be.
Do you mean recently?
Yeah, I think like that baggy clothing thing, I don't think it ever really worked. You know what I mean? And I don't think she thinks it ever worked as well. But I'm excited to see what she goes on to do. I think she's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't really listen to her music that often, but whenever I've heard it, it's been pretty good. And I just thought, like we said earlier about commercial music, I just thought this is amazing because her music's gotten so popular, and it's such a middle finger to what the status quo is.
Yeah.
Like, it's so different, comes out of left field, and obviously her brother, the producer, he's pretty talented.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought that was amazing because you don't often see something come in from such a different field and become mainstream. Like, she's pretty mainstream now. So it just goes to show people don't actually want to be treated like idiots who just want the chorus to come in after 30 seconds and all that sort of stuff. Like, they can people underestimate what other people can do. So I really like it.
Yeah.
When you're writing songs, I mentioned earlier that when I was doing it, at least, I had, for every one song that came out, there was like 100 that went into the graveyard. And I remember on my phone, I went through several different phones over the several years, and my recording, the audio recorder, was just packed with thousands of recordings. But only like half a percentage of those actually ended up being anything useful. Do you have, because your songs are short, so it seems like, because when I was doing it, I, to be fair, just kind of stuck to similar structures. So I was like, okay, here's an idea. Now I need to turn it into 3 choruses and 3 verses and a middle. Whereas you it seems like you have an idea and you can just bang it out in a 45-second song, explore it until you feel like it's not worth exploring anymore, and then just finish it and publish it. So do you have like a big bank of stuff that just piles up, or like what?
Yeah, I do. And I revisit it sometimes. Definitely. I think there's I have a huge bank of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Across GarageBand, Ableton, I suppose I do. I think some of it is literally like 15 seconds long. So I'm, thinking I definitely will use that at some point, but it's just sort of when's the right time to use it, I suppose.
Yeah. What's the fastest you've ever written a song?
Quite fast.
Yeah.
Quite fast.
There's been several ways, just did it in a day, just banged it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how the majority of it works. But then when I stumble on something that I know is like
special.
Just something that stands out, I work on it for a good it varies, but I will really be intricate with my producing. And also at the same time, that doesn't mean that in one of my songs, Man Like Me, there's a bit over towards the end of it where it's overproduced to sound like it's really fucking in your ear. You know what I mean? But yeah, so between an afternoon and or less than that. And like, you know, if I'm particularly busy as well with other things in my life, which I usually am, I could work on a song for up to like 2 months.
Yeah.
Until it's the way that it needs to be.
And okay, let's go into your more technical stuff. Like, what's your setup at home? You have a home studio, I guess.
I have a laptop, and oh my god, I have to tell you the story about my Focusrite.
Okay.
So I have this little Focusrite, and
Wait, say again, a Focus.
Focusrite. It's a like audio enabler. I don't know what you call it. It's like that.
Oh, do you mean the studio capture there? Like an audio interface, you mean?
Audio interface, that's it.
Right.
That's what it's called. It's Focusrite Scarlett, and it's kind of...
It's the red one, isn't it?
Yeah,
Focusrite,
the red one,
yeah.
And so first of all, for like a first sort of 4 or 5 months of my making music, I was literally like using my Apple headphones, just like singing into the little thing, which I really enjoyed, yeah.
Yeah.
It was good. And I thought it was fun. And then I was sort of thinking about upgrading my game and looking into Focusrite, and I hadn't bought anything yet. And on my birthday, which is in November, on the 14th of November, I was in college and I got a phone call from my mum, and she said, "Who's Nicoletta?" on the phone. She called me and she was like, "Who's Nicoletta?" And I was like, "I don't know who Nicoletta is. You tell me." And she was like, "Well, you've got a parcel, you've got a package in the mail from some woman called Nicoletta. Like, are you sure you don't know anything about that?" And I was like, "Nope, I don't know any Nicolettas. Thank you very much." And anyway, so they saved it for when I got home, and I got home, opened up this fucking package. What was inside it? A fucking Focusrite. And it had this message from and it said, "For you, sexy, from Nicoletta, 3 kisses." No word of a lie. Like, no word of a lie. And it was during that time where Amazon had like fucked up all their orders and everyone was getting like random parcels from everyone in the world. Yeah.
You just got some random one from a mistake. It was just a mistake.
Yeah. Just this Focusrite that just landed in my lap on my birthday.
That's unbelievable.
So yeah, I have a laptop, a Focusrite, and a microphone with a little soft thing on top of it.
Right, and then that's amazing. God's on your side, clearly.
Yeah. See
okay,
what I mean now?
So that's the hardware, and you said you got a microphone, the Focusrite, your laptop.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have like speakers like those that come the monitors?
No, not yet.
So you just got headphones.
I've got headphones, yeah, and I borrow my brother's got a pair of nice ones. So when I'm at home, I just borrow his, or I just use like earbuds. You know what I mean? And I will upgrade my game in the future. And I also really want to get a launch pad. I think those are really cool.
Mm. Yeah, I remember when I first saw one of those. I was in year 9, and my friend, the guy I said earlier, whose dad's a surgeon, he came into school one day with his laptop and this launch pad, and we were all like 14 years old, so we were like, "What the hell is that?" And he's got it. It's all like mapped, so the colours come up when he's playing songs, and it's
so
like,
sick.
We all started like tapping on it. It's really fun. That was quite cool. What about the software? You said you use Ableton, don't you? Ableton Live.
Yeah, so good.
Was that conscious, or did you try like I'm using Logic Pro at the moment?
Mm-hmm.
Did you try that before, or did you go straight to Ableton?
I started on GarageBand, and I was on that for quite a long time, and I really enjoyed that. I think there's actually like people really fucking diss GarageBand. They really have like, you know, they really turn their noses down at it. But it's amazing what you can do if you put your mind to it, you know. And so I started there, and then I sort of did a bit more research. I found out that Logic was a lot like GarageBand, just like more intense. And there was I liked the sort of interface of Ableton. Although, interestingly enough, I did find at the beginning it really set my dyslexia off like crazy. Which is kind of weird because you wouldn't expect it. But because there are so many like sort of little boxes and little boxes with numbers and little dials and little letters and stuff. So like at the beginning it took me a while to get used to it. But yeah, I think Ableton's such an amazing program. Yeah,
Ableton's more suited for live performance, isn't it? You can record on it, but then it's like ready to go with, you know.
Yeah.
I remember seeing some DJs once before. This guy called Jack Garrett. He's a one-man show. Like he he's absolutely amazing. Really, he got a whole drum set, and he has the what's it called? Roland SBDSX, I think it is.
Right.
Where it's just like a launch pad, but it's a bigger built-out thing. And he's a one-man show. He's got a guitar around him, and he's just going nuts playing all the stuff. But he also has a laptop there with Ableton playing. So it seems like a really good piece of software. So that's your songwriting kit. So you sit down and you just got like, do you have like a MIDI keyboard as well to like do instruments and stuff?
I just use
the keyboard.
I just use the keyboard.
That
But
is
I would like to get a little keyboard though. Definitely, I will get that at some point.
That's hilarious. I can't believe you use the keyboard.
Well, to me, I quite like it. It's concise. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just all in one place.
So when you're like doing an instrument or something, because you said you play piano and play guitar. I mean, when you're looking at a keyboard, you don't have like the chords, because the keyboard has a chord.
Yeah.
Like a MIDI keyboard has the chords, and you can see you can visualize the notes. You're just looking at A, B's, QWERTY.
You get used to it.
Crazy. That's mad. What about, so that's your home studio when you're writing songs. What about your performances? So you said you've been gigging. What does a performance look like for you? Like, what's your setup? Are you standing there with a laptop again and just singing, or what?
Well, it's a growth. It's an evolution process, definitely. Like the next performances that I'm gonna do are likely gonna be quite different from the ones that I've done.
In what way? Just more.
Much more performative, because I definitely view my music as very performative. Like, yeah, definitely, and I like that about it. I enjoy that, and so the gigs that I've done have been, I'm always wearing something that my collaborator and friend Callum Gardner makes me. So we work together and I do some little sketches and he makes me something that I love.
Really?
Yeah, it's amazing, honestly. I find it so hard to find clothes that I really, really love. So...
Do you just get your friend to make them for you?
So yeah,
That's
we
amazing.
just got together and it's what he made me. It was like my favourite thing in my wardrobe. He's amazing. It's amazing. So I'll be doing more work with him in the future, definitely. And combining that with music and installation and exhibitions and stuff. And the last gig that I did was really interesting because I hadn't been on stage in a while. And I was sort of really surprised about how comfortable I felt up there. Because I wasn't really expecting to feel that comfortable. But I just kind of felt... I made sure that... I didn't really want the vibe wasn't right for me to... sort of act like I was just like a performer on the stage. I kind of wanted to interact with the audience and speak to them through in artistic mediums, so that was kind of what it was like, the last one. And so yeah, there's like a sort of microphone, drum kit, none of which I use.
Oh, really? Just was a drum kit just sitting there? Yeah,
literally just sitting there. And it was funny actually because I sort of had this whole like idea in my head about how it was going to go, and then the setup was completely different to how I was told it was going to be, and I was going to have like performers to come up with me. Both of them got COVID, like couldn't come, so it was like completely different to how I thought it would go. But it went well, I was happy with it.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, so next time what I'll do is I'll have like a bit more autonomy over the setup, and I'll probably be interacting with the audience like a lot more, sort of looking at boundaries, and trying to work out which the right sort of the right point on the scale of like where to push for it to be just right. Rather than because if you get up on stage and you scream, then that's a bit, like it's good, but subtlety is a skill, you know what I mean? So how would like getting up on a stage and screaming differ to having like 3 people sat in a circle facing inwards gurgling some water, you know what I mean?
What?
So I'm trying to think about these like abstract ways of writing perhaps, or creating an environment that will fit in with this performative aspect. But it might not be like that. Like I was thinking I might, yeah.
I mean, that sounds like there's a lot to think about when you're up there performing your song, plus it sounds like you want other stuff to be going on that's interesting to watch, and not just you guys standing there.
Totally, honestly, there's nothing, like there's just nothing I just don't want to just be on stage, just standing there singing into a microphone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I want to actually have fun there, and make it an interesting experience for everyone rather than just like sort of standing there. Just because I think that can be very powerful and beautiful as well. But for what I'm trying to do at the moment, I have like, whatever the idea is, if it needs to be expressed in music, then it's expressed in music. If it needs to be expressed in painting, it's expressed blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, multimedia at the moment.
Yeah. I feel like we think along the same lines, because remember when I used to do some gigs and stuff with the band, and I started to think about how to make the performance a little bit more interesting. I had this weird idea at some point to have like which I thought might be quite easy to build as well, just have like a stand like that, but it has like a monitor on it, like a TV screen. And have some like crazy visual stuff going on there. And I thought it'd be really cool to like make it mechanical. So like when you're playing a certain part of the song, it's just kind of down, and then when the chorus comes in, you like click a pedal or something, and it comes up and like covers your face, and there's like some cool visuals going on.
Yeah, that would be sick.
Stuff like that. I found like stuff like that was really exciting. There's do you know Trent Reznor?
No.
The 9 Inch Nails.
Okay.
Guy? He's a really amazing songwriter. I really like him. His performances are really cool. He's got all this sort of lighting, and not just lighting, but other stuff going on, which I find really interesting. So it's really worthwhile exploring how to make a performance more interesting. And it sounds like you got some crazy ideas. That's pretty cool.
You know what we did for the last show is you should look into OBS. It's a really interesting software where you can sort of set up like whether it's a projection or whatever on wherever, and this OBS thing, you have the phone in your hand, and it kind of is like FaceTime or something, but it's a live projection onto the background that you've prepared. It's good software.
Would you mean like you can have like a big screen behind you, and what your phone is able to project something onto it? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So say you're standing there in front of this black screen, and you have a light projection coming from a projector, onto your visuals of your choice, and then you put OBS on it, and then on top of what you've chosen, if you have someone that's filming you as you're performing, then you get this like really sick kind of green screen, like sort of shabby green screen sort of what's the word, like what's that word, not pixelated, but when things are like digitally fucked up, like that, but in a really cool way. It's cool. You should look into it.
Look at that OBS.
Yeah.
Have you used it?
Yeah, it was in the last gig that I did.
Yeah.
Do
you have any videos of that?
Not on me right now, actually. They're on my laptop.
Later or something?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Awesome. Have you got any more gigs lined up soon?
Yeah.
When? When and where?
So, the first one is on October the 1st, and it's in South London, and it's with PH7 The Neutral Zone, who I hope will watch this. And he's great, and he has this really cool sort of bunker-esque space.
So it's going to be in his own space?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
He's the guy that sort of runs the space and organises the gigs and stuff like that, and there's a whole team behind him, and they're great people, really good people. And I'll be opening for this band called Cat SFX, Cat and the Special Effects, and honestly, I saw her like a few weeks ago in Notting Hill, and she is so fucking good. She is like, I don't really love rock music. I used to listen to a lot of it and like really, really liked it, but these days I don't really fuck with it that much, but I love Cat SFX. Yeah. Like, she's so sick. Her lyrics are so thought-provoking. She's the most engaging performer. It's just brilliant. Definitely, look her up. She's great. So I'll be opening for them, which I'm so excited about. I'm so excited about it because awesome. I love them. Like, it's so great.
How did you land that?
The PH7 The Neutral Zone, he texted me and he was like, I'd like you to open for Cat SFX in October, please. I was like, yeah, thanks. And then the next one will be, I think it's October like 15th or 16th or 17th or something, and that's going to be more, that'll be the one that I have sort of major autonomy over, I expect. So that would be sort of a exhibition with music with fashion,
An exhibition,
performance kind of thing.
all of that going on at the same time.
Yeah, I want it to be like I want it to be an event, but with lots of things going on. I might, yeah.
Like an exhibition of your own work as well? Or...
It will be site specific. So I really want to work with like the bunker vibes of this place, because it's really weird. Like when you go in there, it feels like some sort of like hideout spot, but not hideout, more like kind of, I don't know, because I'm interested in war already, so I'm thinking about exploring that more and how to build that into the exhibition and this kind of thing. I'm thinking, and another big nature of my work is I think about gifts a lot, like receiving, giving, and this kind of thing. And so I think it'd be quite interesting whether, because if it's an event and there's lots of people coming, there's a chance to involve everyone rather than just being like, bish, bash, bosh, here's what it is, have a look. You know what I mean? Like something interactive. So that's what I have lined up at the moment.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
All right. Now we're going to get on to a subject which is a bit more selfish because it's something I kind of think about a lot. I don't know how much... Huh?
Vamos.
Vamos, right, let's go. So it's the business side of music.
Yeah.
So I studied business, I'm quite interested in business.
That's great.
And I've always felt like it's really important for a creative worker, whether you're an artist, whatever it is, to have a little bit of business acumen.
Yeah, totally.
I think one of the reasons that artists are at least used to, I think it probably happens still now, get screwed over when they sign contracts with labels is because it's so easy to throw 100 grand at an upcoming young artist and say, here's 100 grand, wave in front of their face, sign the dotted line and the money's yours, and then we have a partnership. And, throughout history, people have been like, yeah, I'll just go for that. Without really thinking about the consequences and not really understanding how to read the legalese in the contracts. And it's kind of all kind of overbearing, so they just sign it, take the money, and then later on get screwed over because they lose out on millions and millions or whatever it is. So I think in that sense it's really important for artists to, at least now, particularly now, where you don't have to get go with a label, you can be independent. I think it's really important to think about that sort of side of it, which is a little bit boring because when you're a creative person, you kind of just want to sit down and do your work and be solitary and just do the work and pump out songs. You don't really want to think about contracts and negotiation and money and all the boring stuff.
But you got to.
Oh, you have to, yeah. I think so. How much have you ever thought about that? Have you ever experienced something? For example, one way that artists nowadays, and it's happened to me before, get a little bit screwed over is when they do a gig and the venue says you're going to play for exposure, not for money. And they try and entice you. They'll say stuff like, there's a chance there'll be some, what's it called? What's the name of the department of a record label where they go out and scout for music? I can't remember. Anyway, so they'll say there might be some people there and we can't pay you, but you're playing for the exposure.
Exploitation.
I think so, yeah. I think it's wrong. I understand why a venue would do that because they want to save them money. But as an artist, you really have to put your foot down and know what you're worth and be a little bit assertive.
Boundaries.
Yeah, boundaries, yeah. So have you ever thought about like the business side of like what you're doing?
A lot.
Yeah?
I think about it a lot.
In what sense? What thoughts have you had?
Well, I think I have a few things that I want to start in terms of business. Like I have a few businesses that I want to start. I know that's slightly different to this kind of thing. So I'm just trying to sort of learn a little bit more about the actual like metal steps that it takes, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I think about that a lot, and it's good because I'm not signed to anyone yet. I don't know if I will be. I kind of would like to be. I would like to be, but it would have to be under the right conditions, definitely. I think I would like to be, but I've got a distribution deal, and I like the ethos of these people. I think that was good for me. I feel good about the things that I've read. But yeah, I do really think about it because I think that I know that I want to do creative work, And in order for me to do creative work, I need enough things behind me so that I can execute that creative work really, really, really fucking well. And I don't need a lot to make that happen, but I recognise that you can't just fucking like float around all day and not think about like the actual structural stuff. But what I hope to do is through my businesses sort of like I want them to be supportive, you know what I mean, of like other people. But yeah, I'm really no like clued up professional yet, but I hope to be about the business side of things.
All right. And what's like specifically about like your strategy as an upcoming artist? How do you think about like the next several years in terms of growing what you're doing? Like for example, at the moment your music's on SoundCloud. And it's like the easiest thing to do, isn't it? Just post SoundCloud music. Have you thought about like Spotify? Have you thought about other ways of putting out music? Like you said, you've got a distribution deal. Like what's happening at the moment in terms of how you're growing what you're doing?
So what's happening at the moment is I just want to get everything right and ready, and then it should be in Spotify either next month or the month after that.
When we say everything, what do you mean?
I want to do like a sort of 4 or 5 track project.
Like an EP sort of thing?
EP sort of thing, but I don't know if you can call it an EP because all the songs are so short, but it's something like that. And of course do the visuals for that as well. So that will be going on there at some point. And I think the next focus of mine alongside, in terms of my music, alongside continuing to make music, is I really want to get started on short movies.
Oh, really?
That is really the next, like, I'm so excited about it. So that is, I think, going to be a big part of it. As I said earlier, short films from lots of different songs.
Oh, so the short films will be inspired by the music, you mean? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and vice versa.
Right.
So, yeah, performative sort of short films, basically, with chapters and what's the right word? What's that word for chapters, but in music? Suites.
Suites.
That's
okay,
it.
I feel really bad now. I've never heard of that.
That's right. You know, like SUITES.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, suites.
I've never heard that applied to the structure of a song. That's probably just my own lack of education.
Who knows?
All right.
And I also hope to do lots more gigs, and play with that more.
Which do you prefer, writing the music or performing it?
Writing it.
Really?
Yeah, 100%. I love performing it as well.
Because performing is where you actually get the response from people. And that's, why would you write music if not for the response from other people? So I'm quite surprised by that.
Well, the majority of it happens when you're writing, doesn't it? Because I think, like, when you're performing, is it really about response, or is it about... Actually, no, I suppose it is, because there's like a certain aspect of this music that you're performing. So I guess it is, yeah, but 100% the writing part. But I think maybe that will change. Maybe that will change as I get more comfortable and more experience with live music. I think that when I'm at the moment as a person who's like very early in their career, I there's a lot of freedom for me in just like sitting down and just like playing on my laptop. You know what I mean? So yeah.
All right. Makes sense. What do you think about, again, another left field, NFTs?
Yeah.
Do you know what they are?
Yeah. I know sort of like majorly. I'm no clued up professional.
Oh yeah, but I mean like they've only just recently sort of exploded, and I looked into them briefly and I thought that was just such a good idea because it's another way for like I said earlier, you don't need to get a record label, I believe, if you can be independent, because there are a million and one ways to make money now. And you just need to be adaptable and just sort of stay up to date on what the climate is. And NFTs is one way that artists can make a lot of money, because there are people like, for example, Jack Dorsey, Twitter's CEO and founder. He produced as an NFT a screenshot of his first tweet. And obviously, because it's an NFT, you can't just share it and then have it sort of spread.
I love that aspect of it. I think that's really cool.
And it sold for like $2 million or something. So if you have an audience, like, you know, if you have your 1,000 true fans, NFTs is just another way to productize what you're doing and just sell stuff and get some income in and continue doing what you're doing. I just thought that was quite cool, worth mentioning.
Yeah. That's the next sort of 2 years of my degree. I'm going to make sure that I don't fall into, I think, the trap that people tell artists to fall into, which is that you just do the art, we'll handle the business side of it. You know what I mean? So I'm going to learn as much as I possibly can.
That's basically code for you produce the product, we make all the money.
Exactly. You know what? I was at the pub like a few weeks ago with, he was, well, I wasn't sort of with him, he was just there and I was there. He was an auctioneer for Sotheby's or Christie's or one of those sort of
high-end
things like that. And but yeah, it was one of those two. And I was, you know, sort of chatting about, well, I was in deep thought at that time about, you know, sustaining my creative practice and getting to a point financially in my life, you know, thinking about that a lot. And he was like, what did he say? He said something like, "Oh, don't think about that yet. Just focus on your art." And I said, "Do you think I would be here if I hadn't been focusing on my art?" Like, and it's kind of like, why do you feel the need to tell me that? Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, by saying that, you're sort of trying to get me to believe this like weird notion that what I make isn't really mine. You know what I mean? I found that very, very strange. But yeah, so NFTs and stuff, looking into that. But I think even then, I guess there's always an aspect of it that you have to hand away to like technology or whatever. But yeah.
Are you motivated by fame?
I am interested in fame. I think it's a really interesting concept. And I'm also really interested that sort of everyone, or a lot of people seem to want to be famous. And another next point on that is TikTok. I'm really interested in. Like, I really want to like philosophize about TikTok, like really deep. You know what I mean? Because it's kind of, if you think about it, it's just like a bunch of people on a platform just copying each other.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that so weird?
I guess so.
It's very strange to me, and it's so motivated by views and likes and whatnot, which is so linked to aesthetic and algorithms and you know. And I guess once you put it out there, it's not really yours anymore. It's just sort of part of this thing. But
does that annoy you? Does that sort of culture annoy you? Is it like something you feel like is a bad thing?
I try not to get annoyed. I really try not to get annoyed. It's such a waste of time. I try to critically engage and not get angry. But I don't think it helps. But am I motivated by fame? I think that I am motivated by the idea of a big group, a big sort of platform where things can be shared and learnt and messages can be spread or whatever, you know. Yeah, I think in a way I am, but also at the same time I'm a very private person.
Yeah.
Like a very private person. So yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why I'm so interested in this Lady Gaga's album. It's because she has such an interesting perspective about being in that culture, being famous at that time, but also from the outside. It's like really, really interesting mix of like that kind of like femme fatale distance kind of thing, but also upfront fucking attitude. You know what I mean? It's like really, really interesting. Like to sing about something so, something that everyone sort of at face value thinks is so shallow, but it's actually like quite a deep idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's kind of the thing about being a creative artist, is that fame comes along for the ride, whether you like it or not.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
if you want to be successful, it's like
Exactly.
synonymous with fame.
Exactly.
Being famous. There are many people who don't even like it. Although there's lots of celebrities who they kind of wanted it in the beginning, and then they ended up saying that, you know, I'm getting people to come up to me and talk to me all the time. Talk to me inappropriate. I'm at dinner with my family, and people just come up and ask for dinner pictures and stuff. But you know, there has to be, if you want to be successful as an artist.
Exactly.
There's no other way really.
Exactly. Well, yeah, especially if you want to work for yourself. Yeah, I hope that I will never get to the stage of complaining about my blessings.
Yeah, because I guess there are so many people who would die to be where you are once you're there.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to be grateful, don't you?
And on the whole journey as well.
Do you ever have any doubts? Creative work isn't like a stable job where you've got income coming in. It's all down to you. Do you doubt yourself whenever you're at some points?
I have discipline. I have faith. I have skill. And not in a sort of ego way, I hope. I don't think I'm that egotistical. But in terms of doubts, I think I used to have, like, as a kid, like, basically, the more work I make, the less doubts I have, the better I feel, the better life sort of gets in general. You know what I mean? But in terms of doubt, sometimes I'm like, actually, yeah, no. There are moments where I sort of stumble a bit and forget things sometimes, but it's always a temporary forgettance. You know, it usually comes back, and whatever happens, so I know that I'm like protected. You know what I mean?
By your angels.
Yeah.
Nice. So you have self-confidence then.
I do now. Fucking hell.
You're optimistic about your future as an artist.
Yeah, I am.
Good.
I am, and it took me a while to get to self-confidence. You know, so I don't. What's the word? I don't. What's that word again? I don't compromise my self-confidence these days. It took me so long to get here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, before we wrap this up then, we talked a lot about music, but what else occupies you? You talked a lot about visual arts, you said you've got some business ideas and stuff like that. Like, what else do you think about when it's not music?
I exercise a lot.
Yeah?
Yeah, I love exercise. Everyone should exercise.
Oh, absolutely, I agree with you.
Everyone should exercise. So
what sort of exercise? Like gym or running or what?
At the moment, I'm really into the boxing and ballet combo, which I suppose is like probably in line with like a lot of things that we've spoken about today. But yeah, so I really love ballet. I also really like boxing.
Wait, hold on. I like that. You said boxing and ballet, so there's like the visual side of it, the performative.
Yeah.
Plus this attack, this attitude.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, actually.
And the grace as well. It's a lot of grace. I like the whole like how much it puts in your body, and how actually once you think about it, you can bring awareness to like everything. You know what I want? You know what I mean? It's like it's nice. I like it. And actually, then the other kind of exercise I really love is, I only do it down here because in London it's like so expensive. Naturally, it's like 95 quid for 4 classes, but down here there's this amazing studio in Whitland, not too far from us, and it's the best thing ever, honestly. I found that changed my life. So you go and you put these boots on, and these boots have mini trampolines on the bottom of them.
What?
Yeah, it's amazing.
So they're bouncy boots?
Bouncy boots. And you get these like 0 Gs, and it's really intense exercise. So that's really good. That occupies me.
Oh yeah, I need to try that. Sounds amazing.
Yeah, you do need to try it. I'll give you the details.
Right.
Yeah. What else occupies me? good people.
Yeah.
Making nice environments. Honestly, like most of the time, it is writing or drawing or whatever it is. Thinking about how to make money. Family, walking, as I said. Yeah, most of the time it's creative engaged. What else do I do with myself? Yeah.
I think it's well-rounded.
I think so.
Yeah. Nice.
What do you do with yourself?
What do I do myself? Well, health is a big one, yeah, so I exercise a lot. That completely changed who I was when I first started doing that, because I went to a school which was big on rugby when I was like 13, and they forced you to be a part of the rugby team. Which, before this, I was like a chubby kid. I didn't really like doing that much stuff. So I went to this school, they forced me into the rugby team, and I had to do it, and I lost tons of weight, and then just became obsessed with just exercising and stuff, because it completely changes your mood and everything. Like it's releasing hormones and stuff, and you just feel really good. So that's a big part. Yeah, money, thinking about. I don't really want to go the traditional route of getting a job and working for someone else. What really inspires me is working for my own.
Yeah, me as well.
So I think about that a lot, and I read a lot of books. I'm reading lots of esoteric stuff at the moment about like philosophy and science. It's a little bit dense, but I find it quite interesting.
What are you reading, if you don't mind me asking?
There's a guy called Karl Popper.
Right.
He was a guy he's dead now, but he was alive between like the 1940s or 1920s onwards. And he was the first guy he created something called the demarcation of science, or the principle of demarcation, I think it's something like that, where he said, okay, what's the difference between science and pseudoscience? And he was inspired by a test that Einstein did to prove general relativity. And he was like, okay, if something's going to be scientific, it has to pass, it has to be falsifiable, which means that there has to be a way to prove this theory wrong. If you can't prove it wrong, if you can't falsify the theory, then it's not really scientific, it's pseudoscience, it's basically magic. So I found that quite interesting, just reading his books. They are quite dense. He's like a academic, so a lot of it kind of goes over my head, but it's kind of what I'm reading at the moment.
Nice.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, so that's pretty much it. Where can people find you? Where's all your stuff? Your SoundCloud? You're on SoundCloud, aren't you?
Yes, I am on SoundCloud. Most of it can be...
Under what name?
Isabel Cats. Isabel Cats, just with one L. But most of it can be found through my Instagram, which is Isabel Cats 511, just with one L. And then the links in my bio, my pictures are there.
All right. You said you got a gig on the 1st of October?
Yeah.
In South London?
Yeah.
Where in South London?
In Amp Studios on Queen's Road.
Is that something people can just turn up to?
Yeah.
Right. And that's your gig, and when can anyone expect music to come? More music releases?
Pretty soon.
Pretty soon. All right. So some anticipation is coming soon.
Yeah.
All right.
I'd say this month.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Christian.
Came from a club night yesterday to doing this today. Very spontaneous. I like it.
Yeah, I like it as well. It's such a pleasure to meet you.
And you? This is really fun.
Yeah, I think you have really interesting questions.
Thanks so much. Interesting answers.
Good chats. Good chats.
All right.